The following narrative combines a futuristic scenario along with real-time, real-world information that illustrates communication dilemmas concerning certain various topics, such as medical countermeasures, as in scenario-specific storylines and the likes. Scenario-specific storylines are narratives or stories that explore potential future events or conditions like pandemics, plandemics, social upheaval, the likelihood of war, social collapse, etc. A scenario matrix of truth mixed with theoretical, with consideration given to both constant and unpredictable driving forces. Say what? This perspective scenario is not entirely intended to predict, events to come. Rather, it is meant to serve as a plausible narrative that illustrates a broad range of serious and frequently encountered challenges in the realm of risk and crisis communication and so on. You with me? Okay, here we go. It's 2025. The world has become simultaneously more connected and yet more divided. The world seems almost universal in access to wireless internet, and new technology, AI and the likes, and other internet accessing technology that's used to stream content from the internet, which is a means for readily sharing news and information, right? It's supposed to be, supposedly. Many people have chosen to sort of self-restrict the sources that they turn to for information, many times electing to interact only with those sources that, with whom they agree with, This trend has increasingly grown more and more isolated, little isolated cliques, making communication across the board in between these groups more and more difficult. Most all of which is actually a controlled narrative, if you didn't know that. Let's get that straight right out of the gate. People believing this news source over that news source, all of which is carefully controlled and crafted and, controlled despite the name of the news agency, strategically shaping the story surrounding a topic, event, person, brand, political affiliation, or whatever by influencing how information is presented and what perspectives are to be highlighted. It's mental steerage, indoctrination tactics, and the likes. Okay. The World Economic Forum elites, who really like saying the quiet part out loud, have been hinting that they're planning some major thingdemic, whether it's another pretended biologic or pretended virus, something related to some sort of invasion or fake invasion. I'll get to that a little more on that in a bit here, in a little more detail. Or some other such blather to speed up the global adoption of the New World Order. Klaus Schwab, those leftists who call the right Nazi Marxist, the left truly are the Nazi Marxist. Birds of a feather, The stupid order out of chaos debacle, which, dear friends, it's coming. Professor Arturo Briss, a panelist at the World Government Summit in Dubai, said that to complete the transformation, he's talking about bringing in the new world order, to complete the transformation, a shock of some sort would be necessary, for the brave new world, eh? The brave, not so new at all, same old BS world is more like it. Do you keep up with the global news headlines at all? I do. I do, just to see what's circulating, in the propaganda world or the mainstream media, as you may know it as. Each morning I receive a newsletter that presents live links to 150 news outlets pertaining to headlines from around the spherical world. And it's blatantly obvious that the lefty news outlets, which is 99% of them, outlets, toilets, whatever you want to call them, they all sing basically the same pre-said, pre-written, preordained, scripted, empty-headed narratives. Shock, chaos, doom, gloom, crapola this, baloney that, and many people believe them and live and die by the news. Sad. It's hard to talk to many people about the following topics because the mind-controlled, zombified narrative that most people are used to never really addresses any of this next bit of information, unless it's being done to disparage and discourage anyone from actually pursuing it. So many people don't recognize or refuse to recognize, I should say, truth because, our institutions of learning, and the mainstream media tell them not to accept any information unless it comes from their very own pre-approved CIA-controlled disinformation, so-called headline news sources. Those guys, you watch them every night on the evening news or the morning news. This is Roger Cacatoro reporting. It's all baloney. And like the good little pre-programmed zombie automatons society has become, they do and say as they're told, don't you? And sadly, they believe whatever the propaganda of the news tells them to believe. The masses of the world, young and old, have unknowingly become drawn into subversively engineered psyop New Age programs of coercion. Yep. And the masses of the world, by and large, have bought it hook, line, and sinker. Hook, line, and stinker, really. The intelligence agencies have since worked towards weaponizing minorities of all shapes and sizes, from economic stature to gender to skin tone, feminist politics, without them really realizing what's even going on. Certain intelligence agencies have most certainly hijacked feminazi politics along with New Age movement baloney. Ever since, going back a bit here, ever since the end of the Vietnam War era, by infiltrating public schools and public and private universities, all under the guise of bringing down the military-industrial complex. Nope, not quite. No. The point, actually, under the direction of the military-industrial complex, was to both strengthen the military-industrial complex and to indoctrinate the masses. Mission completed. Mission accomplished. There's an operative organization working in this country that Aldous Huxley called Over-Organization. Aldous Huxley. Aldous Huxley was the author of a book called A Brave New World. It was written in 1933. Huxley depicted a future society where individuals are genetically engineered and conditioned from birth into specific social roles. That sound familiar? Something we keep inching closer to? A more up-to-date term would be dystopian government, always moving towards global governance. As technology becomes more and more complex, there are more and more elaborate organizations and compartmentalization. One department doesn't talk to the next. And incidentally, the advance of technology accompanied by advances in the science of organization continue to grow this trend. Nobody communicates. That way, nobody really knows what's going on. Keep them divided. Through greater and broader technologies, it's possible to make organizations on a larger scale than it ever was thought possible via the internet, Zoom, things like that. So that you have more and more people living out their little lives as subordinates in these hierarchical systems controlled by bureaucracy. People who believe they are connected, and tuned into the world through what equate to be mass deception programs. The bureaucracies of big businesses and the bureaucracies of big government. Not to mention drugs. Oh, don't forget the drugs. Drugs, pharmakia, sorceries. Most drugs produced en masse by big pharma. Not street drugs only. Not street drugs. But by big pharma. Big pharma, the CIA, and the Department of the Redundancy Department. Big government, big bro, big brother. That guy. All are mass deception programs. Programming you. Programmers. The world is drug crazed, Of course, drugs. That's how they would do it. It's the easiest way. Bible even calls it out. Do you watch TV? We didn't for a long time. Me and mine, we quit watching TV basically for about 10 years. Lately, we've been watching select TV media through the old DVR sort of thing, for quote unquote educational purposes. Mostly a bit for a bit of entertainment. There's no education to be found in any of that, not positively, anyways. Which is really, really hard to do these days. Find anything entertaining and useful. Yuck, what happened to TV? Thank goodness we can fast forward through the endless barrage of stupid commercials. Each 30-minute segment of TV is big pharma ad after big pharma ad after litigious enticement programming, liars of all shapes and sizes. Have you or your loved ones been a victim of fraud? Yes, it's happening right now. Good golly. The amount of crappy big pharma ads and all the rest. Yeah. All for a brainwashed society that showed God, that actually shoved God out of their schools and homes and institutions in favor of the lie of evolution, which screams all things evolve, thereby improving. That's how we got here, right? They improve? They do? Really? Actually, nothing improves. Nothing is improving. Nothing. Everything is in a state of decay, as a matter of fact. The second law of thermodynamics states that the total entropy of an isolated system can never decrease, meaning that in any energy transfer or transformation, some energy is always lost and becomes unavailable to do work, leading to an increase in disorder or entropy. It leads to entropy and disorder, believe it or not. Entropy is a measure of disorder or randomness in a system, okay? The second law essentially states that systems tend to move towards a state of greater disorder over time. That's not improvement. That's a proven fact. It leads to irreversible processes. The second law explains why many processes in nature are irreversible. Like, what's an easy one? You cannot unscramble an egg, can you? Sorry, Humpty Dumpty, there's no going back to your former state. And all you will do after falling off the wall and splattering all over the ground and leaking out your contents is to continue to rot, break down, and decay. That's not improvement. So if creation is improving according to evolution, why does Big Pharma, if evolution is improving, rather, I should say, if evolution is improving, we're improving because of this false concept, why does Big Pharma shove drug after drug after drug down everyone's throats in order to supposedly improve their daily existence in hopes of extending their never-evolving lives? Does nobody think of these things? Nobody ask these questions? This kind of stuff goes through my head. And don't say thousands and millions of years are needed, that's gibberish. Why does no one really ever get any better? My doctor said. My doctor said. Your countless doctors, just like your countless lying politicians that you support, and the prosperity preachers, all of which you just love, tell you whatever it is that you want to hear so that you will continue to financially support them. Oh, there it is. By enslaving you to both them and the system. Brave New World, my patootie. Let's get back to your slave masters here. If they want to preserve their political powers indefinitely, retaining their upper hand, all they have to do is to gain the consent of the ruled, and in this they do. And they do it partly by drugs, and partly by the ever-increasing techniques and lies and propaganda, the same, always the same. Voila, there it is. They do this by bypassing the sort of rational side of man and appealing to the subconscious and to people's so-called deeper emotions. And also physiology, which works by, believe it or not, making you and them actually love the system of slavery. Did you know you're in the system of slavery? You sure are. You need to look up the Stockholm Syndrome. Study that for a minute. On that, you'll learn a little bit more about that retarded condition. Whatever will these people ever do if the only system they know breaks down, collapses, and they can no longer rely on their captors in the only manner they know? Utter chaos will explode everywhere. It's coming. Ever study the Bible? Remember the epistle of Jude? Jude 1:18? How that they told you there should be mockers in the last time who should walk after their own ungodly lusts. Jude warns that in the last times there will be scoffers who will follow their own ungodly desires, indicating a disregard for God's truth and a focus on worldly pleasures. Guess what? That's not some future event. That part's already here. It's been here, and it's getting exponentially worse. Okay, back to World War II era. Let's pull that into the mix. What were Hitler's tactics? What were Hitler's methods? Hitler used terror on one hand, and the fascist movement also used brute force, on the other hand. Almost the same, not quite. But he also used a very efficient form of propaganda using the modern devices, at the time, which was the newspapers, and the radio, which he used to the fullest extent and was able to impose his will on an immense mass of people around the world. Slavery to newer and newer technologies. Devices can be used to limit freedoms, not increase the limit. Like 24-hour propaganda or news, as you call it, or probably call it. News reports, 24-hour news reports, government publications, social media, cell phones. These are all devices which are used to actually limit your freedoms, not increase them, limit them. So let's take a piece of history. A very painful piece of history that now they're trying to tell us in their newest modern interpretations and in the so-called cutting-edge universities that this actually never existed or took place. It didn't really take place. World War II. I don't know how dumb got to be to believe that, but the propaganda used by Hitler was incredibly effective, like it or not. It's still working and still being used in newer and more creative ways. Fear-mongering, with today's handheld walkie-talkies. Here's one right here. Slash computational devices. Well, now I'm onto a cell phone. Basically the same thing. Walkie-talkie computational device, which is a cell phone. Fear-mongering becomes a global phenomena literally within minutes or seconds. You get all this information in from all over the place. Bang, bam, fake invasion. Bam, fake pandemic. Bam, global lockdown. Bam, instant stupidity and chaos. Bam, they just shut down banks and commerce. Ooh, wait a minute, what? What are we going to do? I can't go to the ATM. So what do you do when you can't do that? You can no longer use your money. When they collapse the money system and you can no longer use physical money, whether it's the fiat or the gold system or the silver system, they won't allow you to use any of that stuff. It won't be recognized. What are you going to do? Rob everybody you see? Steal their food or anything else you can lay your hands on? It's what will happen. Who's ready for that? Dystopianism. Dystopianism explores imagined societies characterized by oppression, suffering, and a lack of freedom, often serving as cautionary tales about, societal trends and the good old misuse of power. That's here already. It's here in its infancy, sort of, but don't worry, it'll get a lot worse. In 1931-32, Aldous Huxley published A Brave New World book that presents a nightmarish vision. I mentioned it a little earlier of a future society, and it's pretty much spot on even now in not only description but exactly where things seem to be heading. This novel was banned in Australia and Ireland shortly after its release, supposedly due to its concerns about its language and perceived anti-religious and anti-familial themes. So what's coming may surprise you. Hold on to your boots. UFOs, aliens, you know. It's easy and sort of fun to get caught up in, sci-fi alien type stuff. Many people are ready to believe that, believe it or not, that aliens are sentient beings who are waiting for the right moment to step in and help humanity. Yet many of these same people shun God and Christ. They'll believe the aliens will help them, but not Jesus. The Bible does teach that there are spiritual, intelligent beings made by God called angels. Some are good, some are fallen. Among the fallen are what are known as unclean spirits. Demons, devils, same thing. Demons, devils, fallen angels, unclean spirits, they're all one and the same. Are fallen angels aliens? Are aliens fallen angels? As with demons, angels could be considered foreign beings to Earth, so there is room loosely for the term alien to be used to describe them. Operation Paperclip. This all has a grand ending, don't worry. Operation Paperclip was an American top secret program of the Joint Intelligence Objective Agency, JIOA, which was carried out by Special Agents of Army, CIC, that's the Counterintelligence Corporation, Corps, the Waxing Crescent Moon Project. The Waxing Crescent Moon Project had spirited away in World War II, or when it supposedly ended, more than 1,600 Nazi scientists, engineers, and technicians, even officers, from out of Germany, out of World War II Germany, and absorbed them into America, obtaining high positions in American industry and government. IDs, passports, weekly check, the whole 9 yards. These scientists then led the American military black projects at the end of World War II throughout the Cold War era and beyond. They're still doing it. Which invariably became the military-industrial complex, which evolved from the Third Reich into the Fourth Reich, which is a state of continual, ongoing, perpetual warfare and chaos. They try to pretend like it doesn't. That's a fantasy thing. It's there. We're there now. We've been there. One could say that America had been invaded by inviting the Third Reich, Nazi politics, in without them firing a single shot. That's another mission accomplished. Who won the war? Who won that war exactly? World War II? An attack from above. Attack from above meaning outer space. One of the Nazi scientists, or actually, scientist, engineer, Dr. Werner von Braun, who was an actual rocket scientist employed by the Third Reich, who basically pioneered or helped to pioneer NASA, did indeed warn us about an eventual attack from above. He ain't talking about God either. Who listened? This concept of an alien false flag operation has intrigued scholars and conspiracy theorists alike. This supposed hypothetical scenario posits that governments might stage or exaggerate an extraterrestrial threat to manipulate public perception, unify population, and justify increased military spending and control. A published paper titled The Alien False Flag, Historical Perspectives and Theoretical Implications for Government Control, that's the title, explores this idea through the lenses of historical false flag operations, past and present, and the perspectives of notable figures such as I mentioned, Werner von Braun, Ronald Reagan, William Cooper, David Icke, Dr. Stephen Greer, Nick Pope. By examining their statements and theories, it's easy to conclude how an alien false flag event could be used as a tool for geopolitical strategy and public manipulation. Shortly before Dr. Werner von Braun died in 1977, Dr. von Braun decided to confide to a colleague of his, Dr. Carol Rosen, about the details of a secret space agenda. Dr. von Braun invited Dr. Carol Rosen into his office, and needless to say, von Braun stunned Dr. Rosen by describing the Fourth Reich plan of the military-industrial complex, point for point, as well as describing in exact detail where it was all leading. Orwellian planetary control under an oppressive one-world government. So according to von Braun, space-based weapons, satellites and the likes, later known as what we know now, or used to know back in the 80s, as the Star Wars program, think Ronald Reagan era, this was to be publicly promoted as a sort of a space shield against, Soviet Russia, because they're always supposed to be our enemies, right? Then they would be promoted as a defense against terrorists from third world countries, rogue nations, or so-called, nations of concern. Then their necessity would be justified as a protection against asteroids and meteors crashing all over the planet. That's how they brought us into it. The problem is said Space Force weapons that are orbiting us, supposed to be keeping us safe, are pointing in the opposite directions, okay? They're pointing at Earth itself, at us. So the last trump card of a final false flag justification, according to Dr. von Braun, would be their Space Force installation in orbit against Tic Tac UFOs. Been seeing a lot of those in the news in the last few years, of a supposed alien threat, which would then attain sudden, heavily controlled mainstream media coverage of a subversively engineered propaganda campaign at a key time. So, a last trump card example of which is the final false flag, grand display and military-style performance art show, basically. In recent past years, the mainstream media has basically lambasted, tarred, and feathered anybody who claim to be observers of UFOs as crazy conspiracy theory kooks, ever since the 1947 Roswell UFO incident, after which the CIA, MIB, came into existence to protect the military-industrial complex's UFO patents. Isn't it rather strange now that the heavily controlled media machine of America would seriously divulge more or less overnight that its military-industrial complex has indeed filmed tic-tac-toe UFOs, actually multiple times, after denying it for so long, along with countless other sightings with video proof. After lying and dismissing them in the past, now they say they are other than worldly biologics that present no threat as they fly supposedly willy-nilly over nuclear installations, military bases, and other sensitive areas. Huh? Diego, who projects that the population of the United States will be reduced by up to 70% in 2025. Wonder if that's part of it. We'll see. And the New World Order, remember, start date, their hard start date, is supposedly set for the year 2030. That's 5 years out. Is the alien false flag closer than we think? Will there be some sort of a prelude war at first to lead into that, maybe? Some sort of supposed space-based confrontation among earthly superpowers first, and then everything goes kablooey. After all, the U.S. does have in place a military space force ready in the wings. Remember that. Questions. I have a lot of questions. In the annals of history, false flag operations have been employed over and over and over and over by governments and other entities to manipulate public opinion, to justify military actions, and to consolidate power. Just look at the lie of 9/11 and the Pentagon attack, for example. Talk about a fabricated load of manure. These covert tactics involve disguising the true perpetrator of an act, thereby misleading the public and often rallying support from the public for actions that might otherwise be met with resistance. Understanding the mechanics and implications of false flag operations is crucial for comprehending how power can be exercised and abused in socio-political contexts. Here's a few brief overview examples of false flag operations in history, if you're not familiar with those things. They seem to slide right on past you. False flag operations have been documented throughout history, serving as pivotal tools for deception and manipulation. Some notable examples include the Gleiwitz incident in 1939, where Nazi Germany staged an attack on a German radio station and presenting it as a Polish attack, a Polish assault. This event was used as a pretext to justify Nazi Germany invading Poland, marking the beginning of World War II. Another one is Operation Northwoods, 1962. Proposed plan by the U.S. Department of Defense to stage false flag terrorist attacks on American soil, intended to garner public support for military action against Cuba. Though that one was never actually fully implemented, the plan illustrates the lengths to which the governments might go to fabricate justification for war. The Gulf of Tonkin, that was an incident in 1964. Another false flag. Reports of attacks on U.S. naval vessels by North Vietnamese forces, which were later revealed to be exaggerated and false, which were used to escalate the American involvement into the Vietnam War. So these instances highlight how false flag operations can effectively manipulate public sentiment and policy, underscoring the potential for abuse of power. So the concept of an alien false flag becomes a means of control. It's what it is. Building upon historical precedents, the concept of an alien false flag operation posits that a fabricated or exaggerated extraterrestrial threat could be used to unite the global population under a common cause, justifying increased military spending always and imposing stricter governmental controls. So this hypothetical scenario suggests that governments might stage or amplify reports of alien encounters to create a sense of urgency and fear, thereby facilitating the implementation of policies that might otherwise be unpopular or resisted. If you think you're under attack, save me. Then well, it's okay. We have our blessing. Go right ahead and do that. So the idea is not merely a product of speculative fiction, but has been suggested by various public figures and theorists as a plausible strategy for achieving geopolitical goals. One world order, new world order, one world government, one world society, one world religion, beast system. It's coming. The implications of such a strategy it's profound. They're profound. Potentially altering the course of international relations, defense policies, and public trust in government. Not that there's much of that anymore. The 1,000-year millennial reign of Yeshua, Jesus Christ, which comes to an end right about the time that Satan is released from his prison when Christ returns. Revelation 21-3, and I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold of the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years, and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. After that, he must be loosed a little season. So Revelation 27-8, and when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. So upon his release, in no time at all, Satan once again turns the masses against God and his kingdom. How? I wonder how will he deceive so many so quickly? Will he convince the masses that Christ is a real live alien attempting to eternally enslave all of mankind? That Satan is a master liar and manipulator after all, right? It's just a thought. The Vietnam conflict had been initially triggered by the Gulf of Tonkin false flag event. So if the government can lie about the Vietnam War, 9/11, Iraq having weapons of mass destruction, and they did, then they will lie about anything, such as covering up appropriated Nazi technology, which has led to rapid technological developments behind the smokescreen of aliens. In a speech delivered by President Ronald Reagan, Reagan emphasized the importance of global cooperation and unity to address common challenges, including nuclear disarmament and peacekeeping. Also, the alien threat speculation. The most striking part of his speech was the following passage. Quote, "In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war and the threat of war?" End of quote. Things that make you go, huh? Pay attention, boys and girls. We live in very, very, very weird times. Pay attention. Keep your eyes on the skies. Keep your mind on Jesus Christ. Take care and God bless.